Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is PsychoGold and this is PsychoGold Videos. Today we're going to be checking out Rising of the Shield Hero episode 3. Now I know that I am very late to this episode and I apologize for that. Fingers crossed this week we'll see things go back to a bit of normality. I had big plans for this weekend in terms of filming stuff and yeah, didn't quite go according to plan. I streamed Resident Evil 2, which was really good fun, so thank you if you turned up for that. It was really interesting seeing the Twitch and the YouTube chat interact with each other, but some of the other stuff I'd planned to both film and edit, because it's already filmed, yeah, hasn't quite happened how I wanted it to. Gonna try and get a bit of it done today, but I don't have that much time unfortunately, but it's okay. I've got Monday, and like I said in a previous video, I'm only going to be worrying about watching Dororo on Monday, so I'm probably going to get some of the other stuff that I plan to do today done. And that way, hopefully, it'll balance out across the whole week and I won't have these massive moments where I feel like I need to do everything and then I have like a day where I'm just burnt out. So that's where I currently am right now. So we're going to jump into Shield Hero and I can't wait for this. I've heard that this is a really good episode, which, considering I've really enjoyed the last two episodes, I'm curious to see what makes this one specifically, like, really good. So, here we go. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was episode 3 of Rising of the Shield Hero, and now I can see why everybody was talking about it. There was a lot to digest in that episode. We had the slightly more confident Raphtalia, we had some new armor, we had the reuniting of the 4 heroes, and like I said in the episode, I'm still not convinced that the sword hero and the bow hero entirely buy what Naofumi was accused of. I just think that they were smart enough to realize that he was going down and anybody who tried to get near him in the process was going to get burnt by the flames that had surrounded him. And they saw no benefit in trying to side with him. I find that especially true of the bow hero, who basically didn't seem that bothered that Naofumi was there, and he said, you know, see you at the wave. Whereas the sword hero was kind of like, you know, try not to get in the way. He's a little bit more negative, but the only one who's so outwardly spoken of him is the spear hero. And again, whilst it is easy to assume that's because the spear hero is not the nicest of people or he has something against Naofumi, you also have to remember that he's the hero that has whatever her name is, I can't remember, but the princess who obviously turned everybody else against Naofumi. I'm not sure which one is the one who's actually calling the shots. It could be the spear hero, but I'm actually not convinced that it isn't her specifically. And in the opening credits we see that she like is sat on the throne with the king. So is she his daughter? Because we know that the king didn't exactly seem to like the shield hero from the word go, and then later on obviously she was the one that became part of his party. And all I can think is it possible that all of the other heroes are actually being manipulated by the king and the princess, and they maneuvered Naofumi into a position where they could turn the other 3 on him, and they don't want the shield hero to gain any kind of power or position for some reason. And the fact that we know that previous shield heroes treat demi-humans very well, and that seems to be like the shield hero is almost like the man of the people, it makes me wonder if previous shield heroes have openly been against the royalty or against the politicians. You know what I'm trying to say? As this episode kind of showed, the knights didn't have any kind of regard for the lives of the villagers or the fact that Naofumi was in the village when they essentially mortared it. If that is the way that they always carry themselves, I'm beginning to see that this kingdom is not quite the nice fantasy kingdom that we were led to believe it is, that needs saving from these monsters. They are clearly much more corrupt and a lot less, shall we say, aligned to the good side than we might be led to believe. And it does make you wonder, like, why are there monsters constantly attacking this kingdom? Why is there this massive evil that is always coming? How do they have a device that tells them when these monsters are coming? There are a lot of intriguing questions, and I have a feeling that the battlegrounds are going to become very murky as to exactly who the real villains are, why the monsters / the undead are constantly trying to attack them. And of course, the people who always suffer in war, the people who always get caught in the crossfire, are the regular people, you and I, who have nothing to do with it. In reality, you know, the villagers of Loot Village can't really fight against monsters, and, you know, they relied on the knights to come and save them because that's the kingdom that they're in, but the knights couldn't care less if they saved them. Until the shield hero, who quite openly said he could just leave them to it and they'd get slaughtered, actively went against what I thought he was going to do and what I probably would have done, and saved them. And whilst it didn't make any difference to the Knight Commander, the next guy down, I don't think we actually got his name or his rank or anything, he made the decision to say, actually no, we are knights. The shield hero just saved all of our lives, the shield hero is trying to save the village, and you know what? That's what all of us kind of want to do, but we're all a little bit too scared to say it, and he inspired them to actually stay and fight and defend the villagers who themselves had come back after, you know, thinking that they weren't going to stand a chance anyway, which they were completely correct, but they couldn't leave Naofumi on his own. They decided to come back and help him, which of course meant that Raphtalia could come back, and the two of them working together is a very deadly combination. Even that massive undead golem, I'm gonna call it, stood like no chance against the two of them, the shield and the sword working together. The funny thing is, of course, is if the four heroes had only worked together from day one, I can see why they wouldn't stand much why the monsters wouldn't stand much chance in general, because Naofumi wouldn't need his own party if the four of them just worked together. Which makes it really interesting that the weapons allegedly repel each other, because again, we only have the word of the king that that is what happens when the four weapons are in the same vicinity. We don't actually know that that's true. Everything that we know about this world we learned in the first episode from the king. And I'm not convinced I trust him or anybody else who is a member of his court. And this episode pretty much confirmed to me that the doubt that I had in the last couple of episodes has merit. And I'm going to say it right now that there is going to be, in the later half of this season, or maybe in future seasons, I don't know how long the story of Shield Hero is, I think that the royal court is going to unravel, and we're going to see that there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. Now, I'm not saying for definite that he's going to turn out to be a quote-unquote bad guy, but I don't think it's going to be as black and white as they want everybody else to believe it is. Which also brings us nicely into the fact that we got to see our first wave in general. And yeah, those were some interesting monsters. The fact that they all appeared to be undead creatures is very interesting. So I wonder what it is that's causing these monsters. The fact that the other three fought the boss, which looked like a weird sort of lion hybrid with a couple of other creatures, like a I almost said a griffin then, it's like that's not a griffin. I can't think what the mythical creature is that thing reminded me of, but there is like a lion hybrid monster, I'm sure, out there, and by defeating that monster they seem to end the wave, so it was a very video game like, and as they all said, you know, they've got a UI, so there is quite a lot of video game logic to all of this, which is really interesting, and I'd love to know why that is or how that works, but ultimately it could just be the way that the magic of these weapons works, and that the UI just appears to be like a video game for us, because it's simply the most efficient manner with which to display the information. Now with that said, it doesn't explain how things like experience works, but I'm not going to read too much into that. Maybe it's just one of those things you just got to accept. Maybe it will be something that does get addressed in the future, I don't know. With that said, I also, like I said in the episode itself, found it very interesting that Raphtalia has changed so much in just a week. Now, it's possible that some of her physical changes are down to her race. We don't know how quickly demi-humans age, how long their lifespan is. Her breed specifically could be very different to any others. Obviously, we don't really know anything about the people who inhabit this world, human, demi-human, or otherwise, so it's one of those things that we'll just have to wait and see whether or not that gets any kind of mention as time goes on, or whether she's going to age quite a lot throughout the episode, throughout the season. But I think more surprising than her change physically is her change mentally. In just a week, quite a lot has changed in the way that her personality works. She's completely lost her timidness, she now has a lot of confidence, she's a little bit cocky, and she definitely doesn't let people talk back to her. She is surgically attached to Naofumi. She clearly cares a great deal about him, not just as her master. Like, I noticed that she doesn't call him master anymore. She refers to him as boss. And it's little subtle changes like that that kind of shows you how differently she views their relationship. Like, she still, you know, calls him by his first name, which is what she said she was going to do at the end of the last episode. But she also just addresses him as boss. She doesn't say sir or master, she uses boss, which I think is very representative of how they've changed over the past week. Obviously, she isn't necessarily used to the way she's being treated by him. Like I said, she's no longer wearing the collar around her neck, so far as I could tell, yet she still has the bands around her wrist, which seems really weird. If she's been able to remove the collar around her neck, I wonder why she hasn't taken the ones off around her wrist, but either way, it doesn't really make much difference. I just found that interesting. But the way in which she talks back to Naofumi now, especially the way she openly challenged what he wanted to do in the blacksmiths, or the armor shop, however you want to view him, I found very interesting. Like, he isn't quite so forceful as he was in the second episode, or how he was at the end of the first episode when he wasn't going to let anyone take advantage of him anymore. He didn't have to order her to do anything and use the curse to make her do it. Like, they seem to have a rhythm now that she just knows what her job is and she is accepting of it. And when she, as long as she does her job, she seems to basically have free reign of independence. But she does know that ultimately she is there to serve Naofumi, and you know, she can push and she is strong-willed, but we saw in a few moments that she does still understand that she belongs to him at the end of the day, and she can only push so far, which is a really weird dynamic. Like, it's such a weird concept to wrap your head around. I can't think of any other show I've watched that's had this kind of dynamic. Like, he doesn't treat her like she is a slave, but there is this underlying, you know, truth that she is his slave at the end of the day. She can push back, but ultimately what he says goes, and she knows it. But it doesn't look like he has to worry about it, because she seems pretty content to stay by his side and do whatever it is that he needs done anyway, regardless of how she might not always agree with it. As for example, when he told her to leave him, she knew that the right thing was to save the villagers, even though she wanted to stay and protect him, even though he was trying to protect them, which is like, oh my god, dudes, you've got to make up your mind what your roles are, because you can't both be defending each other, because you're just going to never get anywhere. But I think it's going to make for some very interesting episodes later on. As I said, I think she is going to end up becoming very important to keeping him grounded, to keeping him on the right path in later episodes, whereas right now, she's kind of learning from him, and he's kind of openly being guided around the world by her, in as much as that she has lived in it, but she still looks to him for advice. And like, when he ordered her the kids meal and she was like, I'm not a kid anymore, and it's like, chill girl, you're literally a week older, you aren't that much more advanced. And he was like, you don't need to act like you're older than you are. And it was kind of like, ah, okay, so maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe she is trying to grow up too fast, you know what I mean? So yeah, guys, I really enjoyed episode 3 of Shield Hero. It kind of feels more like it's episode 4 because of how long the first episode was, but yeah, it is episode 3. I'm really enjoying it. I can see now why so many people were like, episode 3 was good, man, you need to watch it. So I'll try and, you know, actually watch episode 4 much closer to Wednesday this week. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode, guys. Apologies, obviously, that I've got to split it out so that the reaction is a redirect and the review is here on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching this on Patreon, you don't have that problem, and that's my little plug for today. But that's going to be the end for this episode. Thank you very much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Drop some comments down below letting me know what you thought of this episode. If you're new around here, feel free to click that subscribe button. Ring the bell to never get notified about anything, but in one day maybe YouTube will fix its system and the bell will actually notify you when you are supposed to be notified. But that's going to be it from me for this episode, guys. As always, I am Psycho Gold, and I will see you in my next video. Psycho Gold, out.